Caroline Kennedy has fronted the Senate as she wends her way through the confirmation process that all United States ambassadors have to navigate before getting on a plane. The former U.S. ambassador to Japan and daughter of former U.S. President John F. Kennedy appears set to become a high-profile appointment to the ambassador to Australia role. Most observers predict she will be waved relatively quickly through the Senate confirmation process, allowing her to fly to Canberra within the next few months. But the hearings have given foreign policy watchers and officials their first chance to see her speak at length about what her top priorities would be as ambassador, and give her views on the mounting list of geopolitical challenges both the US and Australia are grappling with. Here's what she said on some of the big issues, ranging from China and AUKUS to climate change and brewing strategic competition in the Pacific. Caroline Kennedy would be Joe Biden's first ambassador to Australia since he took office in January 2021. China. Unsurprisingly, US senators at the hearing were keen to press Ms. Kennedy on her attitude to China and to the fraught ties between Canberra and Beijing. Senator Chris Murphy, a Democrat, pointed to China's trade strikes on Australia, as well as criticism state media has heaped on the Australian government, including a Global Times piece describing Australia as chewing gum stuck on the sole of China's shoes. Former Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney struck a similar tone, asking Ms. Kennedy if she agreed China was acting in a malevolent and predatory way that presents a real threat to our interests here and around the world. Ms. Kennedy used much more measured language in her answers. But she praised Australia's response to China's trade punishments, saying the US could learn a lot from their response. They've stood firm, and I think they've managed to come together with a bipartisan foreign policy, and I think a greater and deeper partnership with us in the security and diplomatic areas, as well as across the board, will serve their country and our country well, she said. In fact, Ms. Kennedy came back to that theme of bipartisanship and unity more than once in the hearing, saying later that the Australian people had come together in understanding the challenges posed by China. She gestured towards the relatively modest impact of China's trade strikes, saying Australia was fortunate that it had rich endowments of resources and that most of the goods blocked had been able to find markets elsewhere. She also vowed to back Canberra in its standoff with China, saying pushing back on China's economic coercion is something that United States is going to have to support our allies on. But she did not offer any specific details about what form that pushback would take, or lay out what concrete steps the Biden administration might be willing to take to deter China. The US, Australia and the UK formed the AUKUS military partnership last year. AUKUS, the signature defense technology agreement between the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia, will undoubtedly eat up a huge amount of Ms. Kennedy's time after she lands in Canberra. Australia's push to develop nuclear-powered submarines will strain every sinew the federal bureaucracy has as the federal government develops the regulatory framework, infrastructure, workforce and technical expertise needed to build, run and maintain them. Ms. Kennedy did not dwell on the agreement at length during the hearing, but she hailed AUKUS as a landmark pact of real consequence. She was also keen to stress that AUKUS was much more than just a nuclear submarines agreement. She highlighted the dizzying array of working groups that had sprung up to help all three countries coordinate on a wide range of sophisticated military technologies. I think that there is a lot of deterrence, that it will deliver well before the submarines are in operation, she told the hearing. Caroline Kennedy will become the US ambassador to Australia when confirmed. Climate change. Climate change is a point of tension between the federal government and the Biden administration, which has made it clear it wants Australia to take more ambitious steps to cut carbon emissions by the end of this decade. Veteran Democratic Senator Bob Menendez used his time on the floor to highlight the catastrophic impact of climate-fueled disasters in Australia, including the Black Summer bushfires and the floods which have ravaged New South Wales and Queensland this year. He told Ms. Kennedy there were great lessons from these disasters for the US, and asked her if she would get Australia to think about the climate responsibilities they have in both their own interests as well as the global interest. Ms. Kennedy's response was quite cautious. She highlighted that US firefighters traveled to Australia to help fight fires in 2019 and agreed it was important to move as quickly as possible to clean energy sources. But she did not criticize Australia's current targets or weigh in on the domestic political debate on the cusp of the federal election. The more we can learn about and learn how to combat climate change and move towards a clean energy transition and reduce the impact of climate change, the faster we can do that, if confirmed. I'd be eager to work on that, she told the hearing. China's government has berated Australia for publicly criticizing the deal, accusing it of paranoia and trying to undermine the sovereignty of Solomon Islands. Solomon Islands. The security pact between China and Solomon Islands has stirred anxiety in both Canberra and Washington, which fear the deal might be a first step towards a Chinese military presence on the Pacific island nation off Australia's east coast. Solomon Islands only diplomatically recognized China in 2019, but it has already started a police cooperation program with Beijing. And it seems determined to press ahead with the agreement despite warnings from Australian intelligence chiefs. Even before the news of the pact broke, the United States was moving to re-establish a diplomatic presence in Solomon Islands by opening an embassy in Honiara. Ms. Kennedy only fielded one question on the defense pact. Republican Senator Bill Haggerty called it deeply concerning and asked Ms. Kennedy what the U.S. posture towards it should be. Ms. Kennedy made it clear she was glad the U.S. was getting its diplomats back on the ground in Honiara, saying the fact we are reopening our embassy in Solomon Islands can't come soon enough. But she kept her answers broad, saying she needed to fully read in on exactly what was happening with the security pact. If confirmed, I would work very hard with Australia on this, she said. Australia has a very active embassy in every Pacific Island nation, and it's been a historic area of US engagement as well.